All right, let's jump right into this explainer. We're looking at the fascinating case of Dr. Chen Jingyuan, but get this, we're not getting bogged down in legal statutes or political debates. No, we're using a psychological autopsy from our source material to look at this as a massive, profound collision between two totally different operating systems.
To really grasp this, we're opening up a psychological dossier. Here's our quick roadmap. We'll look at a clash of personalities, the scholar's mindset, the institutional personality, decode the misunderstanding, dig into the psychology of intent, and wrap up with a structural tragedy.
Okay, starting right off with Section 1, a clash of personalities beyond legal facts. We're stepping away from the courtroom drama to look at the raw forces driving human behavior.
So, there's this foundational formula in psychology you might know, Kurt Lewin's equation. It basically says behavior equals personality times situation. B equals P times S. The takeaway here? If you're only looking at what someone did without understanding their core mental framework and the intense pressure cooker environment they were thrown into, you're literally missing the whole picture. We absolutely have to factor in both to understand Dr. Chen.
And our source material hits the nail on the head with this quote. It argues the conflict isn't just a factual dispute, but a fundamental personality structure mismatch. The autopsy suggests it's less about who is factually right and more about two entities that simply do not have the psychological hardware to understand each other. It's like Mac and Windows trying to communicate without an emulator.
Moving on to Section 2, the scholar's mindset, the anatomy of Dr. Chen. Let's see how the Big Five personality model builds a profile of the man himself.
Check out this unique combination of traits. The analysis points out is extremely high openness, paired with really low compliance. Psychologists actually call this a cognitive dominant personality. Dr. Chen thrives on complex theories, he thinks across disciplines, and he fundamentally questions authority. But when it comes to agreeableness, specifically just complying to fit in, forget it. He values absolute truth over social conformity. Plus, with his super low neuroticism, he stays incredibly calm and fiercely logical, even when the heat is turned way up.
Because his openness is off the charts, Dr. Chen operates with something called epistemic humility. Basically, he treats information as raw material for research, not as absolute gospel. He naturally completely rejects that binary black and white thinking. For a highly scientific mind like his, claiming something is 100% definitively true or false is almost impossible. He's always asking, wait, what if I'm missing something here?
You can literally see this complexity in how he defended himself. While sitting in confinement, he didn't pen some emotional plea for mercy. No, he crafted a highly structured defense using Gödel's incompleteness theorems, network topology, and even Plato's allegories. According to the autopsy, this isn't him being defiant. This is literally just how a highly open, cognitive dominant personality processes the world around them.
All right, Section 3, the institutional personality, the system's mind. We're flipping the script now to analyze the judicial system itself as if it were a single living psychological entity. Because, institutions absolutely have personalities too. And the system's profile? It operates on a completely different wavelength. It's highly authoritarian, meaning it demands strict adherence to the rules. It has really low openness. It absolutely hates abstract theories and just wants simple, direct narratives. It expects you to comply, not debate. To a system like this, ambiguity isn't just annoying. It is viewed as a direct, literal threat to the established order.
This kind of institution relies heavily on something called naive realism. It's this psychological assumption that the world is entirely black and white, and that everyone sees it exactly the same way. The system assumes any normal person can look at data and instantly, objectively know if it's fact or fiction. That gray area of epistemic humility we just talked about, the system has zero room for it.
So here is where the friction really starts. When an institution is built for pure simplicity, anything complex looks like sabotage. The system desperately needs you to fit into a neat, easily understandable little box. If you bring nuance or try explaining interdisciplinary academic theories during a legal dispute, the system's personality immediately registers that as a threat, not a defense. A threat.
Which brings us to the inevitable train wreck between the scholar and the institution. Section 4, decoding the misunderstanding, when two systems collide.
This comparison perfectly captures the core issue. It's a true clash of systems. On the left, a mind that thrives on doubt, skepticism, and multiple perspectives. On the right, a mind that demands absolute certainty and binary actionable rules. Like I said earlier, it's a Mac trying to run Windows software. The systems are fundamentally, structurally incompatible.
Because of this massive psychological gap, look at how drastically his intentions get lost in translation. The source shows how the system consistently misreads him. Dr. Chen shows scientific skepticism, the system logs it as a refusal to repent. He uses a complex academic defense, the system writes it off as sophistry and dodging the question. He refuses to falsely confess to something he doesn't believe. The system literally punishes him for a bad attitude. It's wild.
The major takeaway here is that a system built on low openness literally lacks the psychological framework to even comprehend a highly open mind. It's not necessarily acting out of pure malice, it just doesn't have the translation software. To a low-complexity system, the simple act of independent, complex thinking looks exactly like defiance.
Let's look at a specific legal hurdle that highlights this disconnect perfectly. Section 5, the psychology of intent. The knowing dilemma. So the legal system basically assumed that because Dr. Chen is highly educated, he absolutely must have known certain information was false. That's the whole idea behind knowing intent in law. The institution assumes that a guy with a PhD must have this crystal clear ability to separate absolute truth from absolute fiction.
But psychological science tells us the exact opposite is true. Higher intellect usually breeds greater doubt and uncertainty. The more you study complex systems or philosophy, the less certain you are of, well, anything. Dr. Chen's open mind structurally resists the legal requirement of knowing something is definitively false.
Because his brain is constantly exploring new ideas, he simply can't form that absolute binary intent the law is desperately looking for. And this is the real tragedy of it all. He shares and saves information purely to explore it, exactly like a researcher does. But the system looks at that exact same behavior through its rigid binary lens and sees malicious intent.
As we wrap up this explainer, we hit Section 6, a structural tragedy, the final diagnosis. Let's look at the ultimate fallout of this collision.
What our source material argues is that we aren't just witnessing a debate over who is right and who is wrong. We're watching two entirely different operating systems totally fail to interface. Dr. Chen has a highly mature, truth-driven personality. The institution relies on compliance and simplicity. It's a double-blind reality where neither side can read the other's signals at all. And the reason you should care about this is that whenever highly autonomous, creative people crash into rigid institutional structures, this exact psychological fracture is almost guaranteed to happen.
This final quote really sums up why his honest intellectual defense was always doomed to fail. The system only understands compliance. It cannot understand autonomy. The system isn't asking, is what you're saying true? It's asking, are you complying? When Dr. Chen responds with academic rigor and autonomy, he's speaking a language the institution is completely deaf to.
So I want to leave you with this thought to chew on. If an institution's personality is psychologically incapable of understanding complex, truth-seeking individuals, how can it ever deliver true, objective justice? This psychological autopsy really forces us to realize that justice requires way more than just a set of rules. It requires the cognitive flexibility to understand the incredibly diverse minds of the people it actually governs. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and remember, keep questioning the systems around you.